Time and the Rani. Doctor Who had returned to its traditional Saturday tea time slot for seasons 22 and 23, after airing on weekday evenings throughout Peter Davison's tenure as the Fifth Doctor in the early 80s. However, the family audience, which once swarmed to the television set on Saturdays, seemed to be declining. Michael Grade, controller of BBC One, decided that season 24 would not only be relocated to Mondays, but also be transmitted about an hour later than Fifth Doctor episodes, now transmitting at 7:35 PM. This scheduling put Doctor Who squarely against ITV's long-running juggernaut, Coronation Street, with the idea being that it would prove effective counter-programming for the juvenile audience against the older skewing soap opera. At a time when many households still only owned one television, this would place Doctor Who firmly in the ratings crosshairs when season 24 premiered on September 7th. Paradise Towers. At an early stage, producer John Nathan Turner expressed concern about the lack of a traditional Doctor Who monster in this serial. Stephen Wyatt, the writer, suggested that the Great Architect might act through tentacles, which could drag people down to the basement through the air ducts, but JNT cautioned him about the difficulty of realising this idea on screen. Instead, the notion of the cleaning robots was developed, which Andrew Cartmel later encouraged Wyatt to feature more prominently. The name Croagnon was originally given to the planet, but was later applied to the Great Architect instead. The inclusion of the Kangs was suggested by script editor Andrew Cartmel, with Stephen Wyatt deriving the name from a contraction of Kid Gangs. Delta and the Bannerman. John Nathan Turner became concerned that writer Malcolm Cole's scripts lacked a sense of suitable menace, while Andrew Cartmel concluded that they were overlong as well. Over the coming weeks, the script editor would work closely with Malcolm Cole to restructure them. A major casualty was the detailed background which Cole had conceived concerning the Bannermen. He imagined Gavrok's people as originating on a planet which they had overpolluted to such an extent that it was now uninhabitable. This was the motivation for their invasion of the pastoral homeworld of the Shimmeran, whose peaceful nature made them ripe for conquest. Also dropped was the idea that the launch of the American satellite predated the Soviet Sputnik. The setting could therefore be shifted from 1957 to 1959, significantly expanding the range of rock and roll music which could be included while avoiding any anachronisms. Dragonfire. One substantial change made to Dragonfire involved Ace's relationship with Kane. Originally, she accepted his offer to become a mercenary, with the mark of his sovereign permanently imprinted on her palm. Ace rebelled only when ordered to kill Mel. However, it was felt that these developments unnecessarily duplicated Belaz's backstory. Ace's stuffed dog companion, called Wayne, was also dropped. Remembrance of the Daleks. The episode 4 battle between the Dalek faction was filmed under a rail bridge at Windmill Walk. The explosions detonated by the visual effects team drew the attention of the police. They arrived to investigate the possibility of an attack by the Irish Republican Army on the nearby Waterloo East train station, and were surprised to encounter Daleks instead. Cast and crew subsequently returned to both locations, completing the work at Feed Street on the 5th, where more pyrotechnics exploded violently enough to set off car alarms and damage several of the Dalek casings on the 6th. The Happiness Patrol. On November 10th, the day following the transmission of Episode 2, John Nathan Turner received a complaint from H.B. Bev Stokes, Chairman and Chief Executive of Bassett Foods. He objected to the visual appearance of the Candyman on the grounds that it infringed on his company's trademark for their advertising icon, Bertie Bassett. Brian Turner of the BBC Copyright Department informed Stokes on November 25th that his investigation had found no evidence of a transgression on the part of the Doctor Who team, although he did promise that the Candyman would not be used again in future storylines. Silver Nemesis. For the sequence in which the policemen were gassed, visual effects assistant Mike Tucker suggested using the Cybermats, which had not been seen since 1975's Revenge of the Cybermen. He went as far as building a new Cybermat prop, but Andrew Cartmel disliked the creatures and the notion was dropped. However, this scene was newly shot for the 2024 Special Edition release on Blu-ray. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. On May 16th, a tent was erected to pose as the exterior of the Psychic Circus, with its destruction a key moment in the location schedule. Due to an equipment problem, a different and more violent type of explosive was used than had originally been planned. Unfortunately, the crew forgot to inform Sylvester McCoy, who nonetheless recorded the sequence of the Doctor walking away from the erupting Big Top without batting an eyelid. Battlefield. One of the last sequences to be shot was where Ace became trapped in the airlock, which then began filling with water. What no one realised, however, was that the glass used for the tank was not of the appropriate thickness. Once water had been pumped in, with Sophie Aldred hammering on it from the inside, the prop began to lose its structural integrity. Fortunately, as cracks spidered around the glass, Sylvester McCoy realised what was happening and alerted stagehands to the danger. Aldred was pulled clear just as the glass shattered and water poured out over the studio floor. The actress suffered some glass splinters in her hands, but she was otherwise unhurt. Nevertheless, tabloid coverage sensationalised the incident, suggesting that Aldred had barely managed to cheat death. Footage of the mishap would later be used in BBC safety training videos. Ghostlight. In 1988, writer Mark Platt developed a narrative set on Gallifrey entitled Lung Barrow. It would see the Doctor facing his greatest fears by confronting his bizarre cousins in their ancestral home of Lung Barrow. It would advance Andrew Cartmell's plans to unveil mysterious new details about the Doctor's background by revealing a genetic link with the Other, a shadowy figure from ancient Time Lord history. Producer John Nathan Turner, however, was concerned that Lung Barrow revealed too much about the Doctor's origins too quickly. While he liked the setting of a creepy old house and its weird enchantments, inspired by Mervyn Peake's 1946 fantasy novel Titus Groan and its 1956 sequel Gormenghast, he did not want the Gallifreyan elements retained. Mark Platt agreed to rework his storyline, relocating the mansion house to Victorian England and shifting the focus from the Doctor's greatest fears to Ace's, The Curse of Fenric. After the first edits for the episodes were compiled, The Curse of Fenric was found to exceed its allotted 25-minute time slot in spectacular fashion, with episode 4 especially overlong. Consideration was given to re-editing this as a 5-part story, but the total overrun of about 12 minutes was not sufficient to warrant another instalment. Furthermore, Ian Briggs was concerned about the effect this would have on the adventure's pace. Amongst the most dramatic trims, director Nicholas Mallet was forced to make were a scene of soldiers staking hemovores on the roof of St. Jude's from episode 3, and more of the exchange between the Doctor and the ancient hemovore from episode 4. This would be the final story for both Nicholas Mallet and Ian Briggs on Doctor Who. Survival. The final location for Survival was Warmwell Quarry in Warmwell, Dorset, for all of the scenes on the planet of the Cheetah People. Recording there spanned June 18th to 23rd, during which the weather became blazingly hot. Sophie Aldred suffered from dehydration, Anthony Ainley took the production team to task for not adequately taking care of Lisa Bowerman in her uncomfortable costume, and an extra playing a cheetah person at one point tore off her mask and declared that she was finished for the day, whereupon she was immediately sacked. The labour dispute involving Beta was still unresolved, and forced an early end to filming on the 20th. On June 23rd, word reached the cast and crew that another work stoppage would occur that day, a potential disaster given that it was the end of the shoot. However, the nice clear weather meant that director Alan Waring was already ahead of schedule, and the team worked quickly to ensure that everything was completed with just 20 minutes to spare before they could go on strike. And that's it for the entirety of the classic series. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. I will see you in the future for more videos. Goodbye.